Math fans, it's time to convert to decimal degrees. Now, if you're using a GPS, then if you're in WGS 84, there are many different ways that the coordinates could be displayed on that unit. And Erin has been in touch. Thanks very much, Erin. And she's got the problem of people using a GPS and then writing down the various coordinates, and several different GPS units being used. All the coordinates have come back in different formats. If you are using multiple GPSs, it's definitely worthwhile making sure that everything is in the same format, every unit, and on top of that, they are digital machines. So if you can, you should take those coordinates off the digital machine onto a digital computer, and then it avoids quite a lot of mix-up. But I've seen this many times before where people write down coordinates on data sheets and they might not necessarily know what the syntax is, and so you get all kinds of things coming back. So let's have a look at some coordinate formats. If we're working in WGS 84, for example, you could have degrees, minutes and seconds, and this is kind of the classic annotation for coordinates. You could also have degrees, decimal minutes, and finally you could have decimal degrees. Now, computers really prefer decimal degrees, and so sometimes it's necessary to convert to them. There's a lot of online conversion tools that you could use as well. They're available. You can just put your coordinates in any format and it will spit out decimal degrees. But it's actually really easy to do yourself as well, so long as you know how these things are put together. So let's have a look at degrees, minutes and seconds. Here we go. I've just got an arbitrary coordinate here. We've got 127 degrees. That little symbol there is the degree symbol. Then we've got 12 with a dash. The dash is for minutes, and 27 double dash is for seconds. So minutes and seconds, we're all pretty familiar with those. We know how many seconds are in a minute, I hope, which is 60. And there are also 60 minutes in a degree. So armed with that knowledge, if we wanted to convert degrees, minutes and seconds to degrees, decimal minutes, how do we decimalize our minutes? Well, if we do decimalize our minutes, it looks like this: 127 degrees and 12.45. That point means it was decimalized. And how do we get to the 45? Well, if there's 60 seconds in a minute, it's pretty easy. We just divide by 60 and add that to our minutes. Hey, very simple. So if you do see coordinates written down like this, you know that they are in degrees, decimal, minutes. Now, how do we get from that to decimal degrees? Well, as we said before, there are 60 minutes in a degree. So if we take our decimal minutes and we divide those by 60, add them to our degrees, we get decimal degrees. Brilliant. So there's the formula for that. We just take our decimal minutes and we divide by 60. Now, what if we start with degrees, minutes and seconds, and we need to get those into decimal degrees? Well, we could divide our seconds by 60 and then we could divide our decimal minutes by 60. Or alternatively, you could divide your seconds by 3,600, which is 60 multiplied by 60, and your minutes by 60, and then add those to your degrees. Down here we've got that formula. So let's have a look at some real live data and see what kind of different formats, inventive formats, you sometimes get in the wild. Here's what we've got. This first sheet, we can see we've got northerlies and westerlies for our coordinates, and then we have a long list of coordinates. We don't have any attribute data assigned to these, which does make it a little bit harder to unpick what's going on. But the first thing I'd suggest whenever getting lists of coordinates and you're not sure about them is just putting on a filter. So let's just filter these up and have a look what we've got. And you can see here, just from looking at the filter, we have a number of different ways that these coordinates are portrayed. So here we've got a point, 18 point, 18 point, 18 point, 18 dash, 18 colon dash followed by a point, interesting, and 18 dash and then point. So that's our north. We know that we've got some erroneous coordinates in there, to say the least. And let's have a look at these ones. We've got a double dot in there. We may have some commas, a little hard to see. But we can see that there are definitely some things that need changing. The other thing I'd recommend doing, if you've got slightly dubious coordinates like this, is just running through and making sure that all of them are below 60 after the degrees, which these ones look like they are. It depends where you are in the world, but it does look like these are meant to be recorded in degrees decimal minutes. So that'll be our starting point. We've got an 18 up here. That's presumably supposed to be an 89. I think everything else, yeah, every other coordinate is an 89, so that's a typo there. So let's find the erroneous ones in the north first of all, and we have got dot dots, dot dash, colon dash, and then I think the rest of them all look relatively okay. Again, the decimal minutes look like they are all under 60. It's not a surefire way to make sure of that, but it is a guide at least. So let's have a look at these three and just go in and change these accordingly. So we want them all to be the same. Even incorrect data, so long as it's uniformly incorrect, is easier to work with. So I'll just change these up. Get rid of that dots and the dash, and then the semicolon, or the colon. Never seen that in coordinates before. Alright, so that's our north ones done. And then let's go into the westerlies. We've got our 18. That's probably not correct. Then we have an odd dash in here. It looks like a different style of dash, the backtick, and then the double dot in there. So let's change these out. That is a backtick that we can see there. I could use find and replace if I had more of these, but really it's probably not worth it. I'll just go in and do these individually. There we are. Get rid of these backticks and get rid of these double dots. Right then, that looks like we're all right. Don't forget the top one, that was an 18. It looks like it should be an 89, I'm guessing. All right, so we've done that. We're guessing now, but I'm happy to say that these are all in a uniform format. Now the next thing I'd like to do, I want to separate out the degrees from my decimal minutes because we're going to need to add those later on. So I'm going to put in a couple of extra columns here just to work on, and I'm going to take a copy of this original column and paste it in there. That way I know I've always got the original data should I need to go back to it. And then let's have a look at GPS North. I am going to go to data and I'm going to use this text to columns function. Open up text to columns and it's going to be delimited. We're not going to use any of the standard delimiters. Instead, we are going to use other and put a dash in. And you can see instantly what that does for us. It splits things out. Excellent. But it looks like we have more splits than we actually want. What I'm aiming for here is the decimal degrees in one column, or the decimal minutes in one column, and the degrees in the other column. Now up at the top, it looks like I have made an error. If we just go up here. Yeah, I've forgotten to take some dashes out. Okay, so let's cancel that. These ones. Alright, so these dashes should in fact be points. I think there's only 3 of them. So it's not going to break the bank to do this manually. Right, there we go. Alright, let's try that text to columns again. Excel should remember what our settings were. That looks a little better. Yeah, let's do that. Finish there. Boom. Alright, so we have got our degrees in this column, and in this column we have got our decimal minutes. Now there's a bit of weird formatting going on here as well, so I'm just going to format my cells and make them all general. There we go. strange formatting has gone. So I'm going to call this GPS North degrees, and I'm going to call this one North decimal minutes. Now if you remember our formulae earlier, I want to change these into decimal degrees. So I'm going to call this North decimal degrees. And to do that, we'll use a formula. I'm going to say equals to start my formula. I want this divided by 60. So our decimal minutes divided by 60 to turn them into decimal degrees. And then I'm going to add them to our degree column. Enter that. Again, we've got some strange formatting, so just format cells. Let's go with general again. And that looks a lot like a decimal degree. Let's copy that down. Excellent. We have converted our north coordinates to decimal degrees. Now I'm going to put another filter on this, and what I'm looking for here is any errors. Just going to eyeball this. There are better ways to do this. Down at the bottom, if you get any values, hashtag value is usually not much value. It means that something's gone wrong, but these all look okay. They're all in the 18s. That's good. And they're all in the same kind of ballpark. Okay, great. Now let's do the same with our westerlies. So I'm going to set up another one, GPS. Well, let's in fact copy this to begin with. Make sure that we're working on a copy of our data and not the actual data, so we've always got the source to go back to. And I am going to use our text columns again. Again, it should remember what we're doing. Okay, finish that. And we have some weird formatting, so let's go in, format our cells, turn them all to general, right on. So this will be GPS West degrees. Now the West is actually quite important because when you're dealing in decimal degrees, you have the central meridian. Anything to the east is a positive number. Anything to the west is a negative number. So because these have been recorded in West, these should actually be negative numbers. So we'll need to include that in our formula. So I'm going to do West decimal minutes for these ones, and then we're going to have West. Actually, we're going to turn them into East decimal degrees. So for this formula, we want equals, and we're going to do this cell divided by 60, and then we're going to add it to our degrees. But we need to make that into a negative number after it's all been calculated. So let's get rid of, or let's add in some parentheses and then multiply by -1. Enter that. Looks good. Copy it down. Boom. And again, let's filter it and just make sure that we've got no errors. These all look good. You can see what I was saying about the decimal minutes earlier, all being under 60. Now our minutes are all looking in the region of 85. We've got 132 right down there. That might be worth investigating. It looks like a bit of an outlier. So let's go down and have a look at you. And let's turn off our filter and go to that cell, which is down here. So we have 19,389, 18,32. Okay, so the northerly looks alright. We just have this erroneous, in the middle of all of this, we've got a 19. It looks like perhaps that should be a 51 because everything else around it is a 51. So let's try that. You could leave this in as it was and have a look at it on the map. That's a really good way to eyeball your outliers. I'm just going to go with gut instinct here. Probably not the best practice, but hey ho. The next thing to do before you get this into a GIS is to copy your formulas and just paste as values. So we'll just do that, copy and paste as values. There we go. And these original degree, or these original coordinates are now ready to be added to your GIS. So you do get multiple different things happening here. Here we can see 15 data. We've got more things, degree symbols being used, which is nice to see. 2016, absolutely no indication of what's happening here. It's just straight up numbers. And by 2017, it looks like everybody's on board with using decimal degrees. Fantastic. So that's how you can manipulate coordinates that have come from various different sources in many different formats. If you need any help with Excel formulas, just let me know. I'll be happy to help you out with that. And thanks very much for your continued support. Please do subscribe, get in touch via the comments if there's a particular GIS niggle that is bothering you. I'll be happy to help you out. And happy mapping.